All right, so this week in Pax Dei, we got a revelation as to where we, the players, fit into Pax Dei's lore. We got a hint/teaser as to the new dungeons that might be coming in verse 3 or slightly later. We've seen a couple of teasers hinting at this already. I think this is further confirmation as to what we've been suspecting. We also got some updates as to why Pax Dei's servers have been going into maintenance so much recently. It's actually good news, and we're going to take a look into that. And then also the Pax Dei devs have been frequenting the official Discord and answering a lot of our questions about verse 3, clarifying some things, and also sharing some really exciting new information, teasing as to what's to come in the future. We're going to cover all of that in this week's episode. So hello and welcome to all of you incredibly professional consumers of Pax Dei and Pax Dei related content out there. I'm Altari, the professional gamer, and this is another episode of the PAX Friday Review, the show where we talk about all of the fun, interesting, new, and exciting information that has dropped for Pax Dei over the last week. Like I said, this week we got a bunch of lore that came out, specifically one letter, but also a concept art image that I again think is teasing towards some new dungeons that are going to be coming, not of the Zeb variety. We also got our server update, technical update that the Mainframe has provided to us, talking about how it's going to help them with scaling in the future. And then we also got Ostrich coming into the official Discord many times over the last week plus a couple of days, and we're going to try and summarize a lot of stuff there. I think we also might want to do a live stream talking about many of the things that have been mentioned by the developers, either officially on Discord announcements or by them in Discord channels. So let me know down below if you are interested in a live stream where we talk about all of this, and maybe we'll have one in the next week or two. But anyways, we're going to head over to playpaxday.com to take a look at all of these lore posts, and I'll see you over there. All right, so first things first, we got the Holy Edict of Vigilance and Purity. This was a lore post. In-world lore has come to us. Again, still out of world, but hopefully we'll start seeing many of these popping up in-game as well. I do like the teaser nonetheless. It is a article written by, as decreed, His Eminence, the Grand Inquisitor Ignasticus Sanctus the White. Look at that. That is a tongue twister and a half. But they're of the Holy See. They're basically one of the head honchos of the Inquisition. And I'm not going to cover everything verbatim here because I do have a plan for a lore video talking about this specifically, so be on the lookout for it. But I did want to give an overview for all of you who maybe want the lore light edition. First and foremost, the Inquisition, those are the baddies, the human-like baddies that exist in Pax Dei. You can see them at all of the different camps. And this is actually the decree that explains why they are attacking us. And many players don't know, but you might be able to infer from this that the Scions, as the Inquisition refers to them, are actually us, the players. They are popping up in the world. They're appearing out of the aether, and they're fully grown. They don't have any lineage. They don't have any of the signs of sanctification that have been established previously by the Holy See, the religious organization in Pax Dei. So we're outside of everyone else that has existed so far, and we're called the Scions. Because we're different, as with most things, different equals bad, and the Inquisition does not like that the Scions are here, and they seem to be outside or not connected to the divine in the way that they're used to it, which means they got to kill us. In addition to that, though, we are also wielding unknown magics. Up until this point, I believe the Inquisition and their access to magic has been limited based on what the Redeemers have brought to humanity previously. And the fact that these Scions, the players, are able to show up and start just wielding magic like crazy people that they haven't seen before. And the fact that they have access to this magic without needing to be members of the church specifically is kind of alarming to them. It's like, what the heck? Why are people following our organization if we're supposed to be ones with all the power? And now all of a sudden these guys have magic and they can do whatever they want and wield the divine's will kind of willy-nilly whenever they want. So nevertheless, the head honcho, the Grand Inquisitor, Ignis Sanctus the White, has come in and decreed that Scions are an enemy of the Holy See, an enemy of, more specifically, the Inquisition, and they have granted the Inquisition the right and the duty to go and kill any Scion that they see. If you're wondering why the heck is the Inquisition killing us, it is because of this decree. So that is pretty much all that we're going to cover here. There is some other stuff, some really interesting things in here specifically that we will talk about in a lore video, an in-depth lore video covering all of this. So if you're interested in that, for example, what is the Book of Lineages, then definitely hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already, and we will be having a video coming out in the near future. But we're going to head over and take a look at a concept art that was posted with correlation to April Fools. So we'll head over and talk about that now. I'll see you over there. All right, so next up, we have the Fae Guardians that was posted from there was a game that occurred on the official Discord on April 1st, and this was posted a couple of days after, so it is not actually an April Fool's joke. It is something that is posted in response to the April Fool's tomfoolery that was going on the Discord. Now, this one is pretty interesting, and it's interesting for a couple of reasons. This is the first time that we have seen a Fae-like creature in Pax Dei. Up until this point, I don't think we've seen many concept arts of what the Fae are going to look like. And this is kind of an eerily interesting and cool just image of what the Fae are. So they're called Fae Guardians, or at least that's what the concept art image title is. And the thing that I found interesting is this melding between a deer and what clearly looks to be a human, or almost maybe a stone-like face. You can't make out, maybe these are the eyes here, but I found that detail to be really, really cool. Kind of creepy, but really, really cool. And it looks like the normal forest creatures are enjoying themselves, not feeling threatened around these. So it's going to be really terrifying to be in some of the woods of old or the enchanted forest and see some fog roll in and then have these guys kind of stomping their way around, or maybe you see birds flapping off in the distance. This is very, very cool. And I think the thing that has me the most excited by seeing this post is a couple of PAX Fridays ago, maybe 2 or 3 months ago, the developers had posted a bunch of concept art of the bottoms of trees. And in that video, we specifically talked about how one of them looked like a entrance to a dungeon. And I think this is, again, another teaser as to where the content might be going in the near future for Pax Dei. I think that they're most certainly still working on the cultists of Zeb, and we've been getting some lore posts about the cultists of Zeb. We've seen some of the very large Zebians as well, but they are definitely in need of probably extending the availability of some of these items and magical items. And they've even mentioned that verse 3 is going to have more than 15 additional spells added to the game. Well, they can either keep adding spells to the same dungeons that exist currently, like the rivulets and the temples for the Zebians, or they can start adding in the dungeon-based content for other areas of the game, most specifically with areas pertaining to the Fae. And I think this is a good indication of that. We haven't gotten much when it comes to the Fae, but we've gotten now two lore posts. We've got everything about Daimira, who is kind of the primary redeemer that worked alongside the Fae to take care of some bad things. If you haven't seen that video, you should go check it out, linked down below. But then now we also have this concept art. Pretty cool. pretty cool. We are going to now head back over to playpaxday.com to talk about the technical improvements. And then last but certainly not least, we are going to then have a full-blown discussion about all of the fun and interesting new teasers that Ostrich has been dropping in the official Discord over the last couple of days. I will see you over on playpaxday.com. All right, and here we are. And this was a post made a couple of days ago, and it is talking about Tech Insights migration update, upgrading from Amazon RDS Postgres to Amazon Aurora. And this is a semi-technical post, but really it's to cover the fact that Pax Dei has been having a lot of server maintenance happening over the last couple of weeks. And this is explaining why. Up until this point, they've just been saying the databases are going down. They're going to go into maintenance for 5 hours or something like that, and then they come back up. This is an explanation as to why they've been doing that and the benefits for the actual transition from the Amazon RDS Postgres to Amazon Aurora. This is not my wheelhouse, so if I say something completely wrong, I do apologize. Please correct me down in the comments, but nevertheless, these are back-end systems and databases that they are working on, and they needed to improve the scalability with regards to reliability and how the game and the database is going to be able to grow out in the future. So by making this transition from Amazon RDS Postgres to Amazon Aurora, that is going to enable them to have a lot more reliability, but also increased scalability. And that's what they kind of talked about here. The important thing to note is that knowing this and seeing that they've been posting about this, but then also getting a lot of information from the developers in like the general Discord talking about how verse 3 is going to be significantly larger of an update in relation to both verse 1 and verse 2. It kind of makes sense that they're doing these database backend updates because they need to be able to scale and scale a lot more. Does this mean that Mainframe is expecting a lot more players to come in at this point? That's still up in the air, but they are at least going to be adding a lot more content or substance to the game, which these backend databases are going to help with the management of that as current players are accessing it, but also potentially new players come in and access it as well. I did mention that Ostrich came and just shared a whole bunch of information. We're going to do a quick little topical coverage of that. And please do let me know in the comments down below if you're interested in joining in on a live stream where we go through everything that has been mentioned by the developers over the last week or so, and we will cover it all in depth. It'll probably be an hour or more of time just taking that through. So if that is something that all of you are interested in, then we will fire up the live stream and go and do that. Let me know in the comments if you're interested in that. All right, we're gonna swap over to talking about generally all of the fun stuff that Ostrich and the other devs have been talking about in the official Discord in the last week. I'll see you over there. All right, last but certainly not least, we've had a bunch of Mainframe developers popping into the general Discord over the last week to share more information about verse 3 and maybe some stuff that's going to be coming much further down the line, or maybe what's not coming currently. We're going to talk about all of that. This is actually, I really like this. This is something that Mainframe used to do over a year ago, where a bunch of devs would just come in and answer questions in the community. Super glad that they're doing this again, especially a shout out to Ostrich, who has been spending a lot of time with community members. He's been on various content creators' streams. He's been talking to me as well, and really just appreciate it. It's really great to have the feedback that we can just give directly and get information and more feedback to us, the players, from the developers too. So we're going to talk about just general highlights. I am interested in maybe doing a live stream where we break down everything for, word for word. That will be a more detailed video, and I think it would be fun to do as a community. So definitely let me know down in the comments if a live stream is something that you're interested in. And if it is, then definitely go check out the Professional Gamer Discord, and that's where we will plan out a great time for the community to gather around that. But let's talk about combat first. So a couple of things. Combat is always getting updated. Ostrich has come into the general Discord and talked about how combat is not at its end state right now. There is a definite Pax Dei combat feel that they're working on shaping. It's not there yet. And there are several things that they are working on, but more so they are really focused right now, it sounds like, on making sure that combat isn't just left clicking 100 times, especially before you get access to all of the different spells in the mid game and later game. But they also are very, very focused on improving that experience, the usability of weapons, increasing the number of abilities that weapons have, and more so just making sure that the PvE combat systems are really functioning well. And they were even asked, when are bosses coming into the game, Ostrich? And he came back and said, why would they put a boss into the game if the combat for just normal engagements between normal NPCs is still not where they want it to be? So they're very apprehensive of how their combat system is developing. And I am reassured by a lot of what they're saying now that they're working in a positive direction, but we'll have to wait and see in verse 3 to really be able to tell what changes have been good, and then let them know through feedback of what changes might not be the best. Now, with that being said, there was also discussions about keyboard layouts, specifically with the new weapon abilities that are coming in. I don't know what the exact verbiage is going to be for those, if they're going to be spells, if they're abilities. I think they're mostly going to be abilities. There are 3 abilities that are now going to be assigned, and you're going to be able to use Q, R, and I think F was the other keystroke that you'll be able to use for those inputs, in addition to new spell inputs being 1, 2, 3 and control, while the new melee were the Q, R, and F keys by default. Obviously, you can change those to whatever you want, but those are the default. So it sounds like last week we were asking the question of, are these abilities going to be a single slot and you have to pick one of 3? It seems like it's actually that each weapon is going to have 3 abilities on it, and you get to pick when you use them and when you don't. So that's going to be really interesting to play around with. It's going to give us more variability, more things to play, actually respond and do things both in PvP and PvE, and be able to respond to it by having these other actions available to us. So it's more than just left clicking, which I think is going to be great. Hopefully one of those is going to be like a parry or a perfect block or something like that. Some more skilled combat maneuvers where maybe there's a timing component to it, or it's an instant reaction piece. Either way, very excited to see where we are going there. Next, with regard to the threat rework, a lot of players have been talking about threat and how we generate it. Right now, threat is kind of an odd thing where pretty much if you have consecrated ground and you place it, you are the most threatening thing to all NPCs. And that leads to a lot of really kind of lame duck experiences when it comes to how dungeons work, because the enemies are trying to path to the person with the consecrated ground, and then you just body block those NPCs and they can't get to the consecrated ground user, and they basically just don't attack. They just sit there and they let you hit them. They are working on improvements and changes to that, so they are definitely planning on working on it. It's going to be a rough balance for verse 3, and then they're going to come in with a softer, finer toothed comb to improve it after the fact, but they are planning on making changes for verse 3. It sounds like in regards to spells, they said that they're adding 15 plus. They have confirmed that it is indeed more than 15. It's not going to be 15 in terms of what they could guarantee. 15 was the number, but it's probably going to be at least slightly more than 15. I do like that they're not going to tell us the exact number, because we'll have to keep exploring and keep looking to find all of these. Obviously, some people are just going to go and data mine it, and that makes me sad. Very, very sad. But for all of the rest of us who want to go and look and explore and find where these new spells are, they're not going to tell us exactly how many there are, and we're going to have to keep on looking. They will have a wider selection of spells available, and this includes both reactionary as well as instant cast, but also other variations. And when they're asked if they were going to have any more auto tracking projectiles, that they're not going to be having any of those this time around. They also wanted to say that spells are much more common in the world. Right now, you have to go to almost mid to late stage dungeon content to get most spells, and the rest of them are through kind of the mid-tier wilderness POIs. And then there's 3 Oriel early game spells. They're going to be adding more across the board as well. So it's not just the end game where, you know, all the best healing spells are. It's going to be everywhere and anywhere in between too. With regards to bows, verse 3 is not going to have any improvements, but they are working on bow improvements, and I quote, "There are big plans for them." I don't know what that means. Hopefully that means we're getting some magical projectiles. At one point in time in Pax Dei, we had access to a crossbow, though it wasn't useful. It wasn't actually usable, I mean, and I think we really need to get some magical weapons for bows as well. But it's going to be cool because if all the weapons are getting additional abilities, then bows are also going to be getting additional abilities. So there's going to be some dynamics there. Either way, we're here for it. Then Ostrich and the dev team wanted to come out and talk a little bit more about PvP. One thing that I thought was very, very interesting in their discussion was, well, for starters, they've mentioned that Lioness is getting a complete and total rework. That work has already started. I don't know if it's going to be released on the first part of verse 3, which they did also say they are unsure if it's all going to be one patch that's dropped, and that's verse 3 and period, or if it's going to be verse 3 and then separated into parts. But they did say that this content update is the largest. Now, with regards to PvP, Lioness, yes, it's being reworked. But there was also a specific question that was asked with regards to being able to lock your builds. And the comment that was made back actually had to do with they're waiting to implement it, or it's a planned implementation because it's going to be needed for PvP. So that was interesting, because then that means that there's something that players are going to have access to that some players are needing to be locked out of. So defending castles maybe, or other areas, or potentially player builds that can be done in some kind of PvP zone. When they were asked directly about PvP zones and being able to build in them, they said for the wilderness at least, it's not going to be the same building opportunities that exist in the home valleys where any area is claimable. I think there is a key set of phrase there where it's any plot of land is claimable. That means that maybe there's only some plots of land that are claimable. I have some theories as to what types of areas that might be, and they might exist on the map currently and visible. It'll be fun to talk about that. I'm very interested to see if that kind of stuff comes into the game and comes in more towards verse 3. Other stuff that they did want to talk about. So armor items, there's going to be a huge rebalancing with items in game. They're making a lot of changes to how loot and the loot system works. All of the different armors are getting changed and worked on for this. I think this is their first step in creating differentiation. Right now, most players just wear all plate armor. There are going to be definitive advantages to wearing leather and disadvantages to wearing leather, just as much as there's going to be disadvantages and advantages for plate and for light armor as well. So there is going to be a lot of changes with itemization and how all of those particular things work. So I also mentioned this last week, but there was a question by yours truly about our players is there consideration for allowing players to tier up relics in the PvP zone? The response was, maybe we have. So very much so looking forward to some kind of dynamic there, which will add some interactability between different players in those areas. And armor types were indeed confirmed to matter for how you kit. So they said it is actually coming in verse 3. You will have to make strategic choices when choosing your armor class or the types of armor that you're bringing for one reason or another. I think this is alluding to we're going to be getting a lot more different protections, and there's going to be more stats that are going into our equipment as well. And there's going to be some effects, some drawbacks to having maybe heavier armor. Maybe you move slower, you attack slower, something like that, versus lighter armor. Maybe you don't. Maybe you get access to some kind of dodge mechanic or something like that as well. They were also questioned about, on the topic of PvP, they were asked about PvP in dungeons. They said they will definitely go back to the team and talk about opening up just another generic dungeon in the PvP zone. There's not going to be anything offered in that dungeon that is exclusive to the PvP dungeon. You'll be able to get the whatever relics and sigils are elsewhere in that dungeon and elsewhere. But they did mention that maybe it would be a good idea to increase the drop rates or increase the gold recovery rates or just general item loot tables if you're in the PvP zone, which maybe adds this nice dichotomy of players going to the PvP zone, getting ready to PvP, but then also wanting to farm, and then having this dynamic of you can get maybe slightly more stuff by being down there, but you might have to fight some players or find some other players to go and fight to get what they've been working on down there. Thought that was kind of interesting. And then one of the last things that I kind of wanted to mention was durability is getting a rework. It is most likely not going to be making most of its way into verse 3, but they're very much so aware of how shields are just dying like a quarter of the way through a dungeon run, and weapons too, and then other armors have existed on players for months and months and months. Their response to that is a lot of that is due to PvP not being in the game and there not being a gear cycle. So there's a durability damage that has to be done somewhere else. So they have to have that durability damage occur in PvE areas rather than the PvP zones. When they bring on more of their PvP system and more of a reason to PvP, I think they expect that durability is going to not be as big of an issue, so then they can change how that system works. In terms of trade skills, they were asked specifically about enchanting. They asked, why is enchanting not on the current roadmap? And they said it's going to be in a later verse. But most likely the reason why it wasn't on there is because it wasn't deemed as big enough to be listed. And there are other large things that are coming that they wanted to put on the list instead. For building, there was confirmation that we know that the limestone is coming, but then there was actually a post by Thyveen about the fact that some of the screenshots that are posted might be for granite. So don't take any of those pictures for granite. They might not be limestone. They might actually be granite. But either way, that was another area that they wanted to talk about. Some other small things that were discussed, specifically wipe details. They haven't decided exactly how extensive the wipe is going to be, though it does sound like the wipe will be more extensive than what it is currently. There's a lot of changes to itemization as well, so it's going to be maybe more difficult for them to do the L file and sending all of the materials back, but maybe there's going to be some kind of exchange or something. Honestly, I think at this point, it's okay to do a full wipe. If they want to get feedback from us, the players, on any of the new leveling pathways that they've been working on, it might be a good idea to actually have us go through those progressions again, especially if they plan on releasing before the end of 2025. That's just my hot take. I know that's a very contested discussion. They were also asked about recycling. Recycling is an active discussion. They're just not sure on the exact version for when it arrives. So it's probably not a verse 3 topic that they're adding. And then they were also asked about fast traveling, and they explicitly said that fast traveling is not for item transport, and they don't want to exactly spill the beans on this since they don't know the final stage of things, but it was discussed that fast travel costs would increase with the amount of items in your inventory. Specifically, that being grace is the cost that it's going to increase, as opposed to something. The last thing that I will leave us on for all of this, since we've been talking for quite a while, is when asked where Atlantis is and where the oceans are, the response was simply, I looked to the horizon and didn't see the oceans. Take that for what it is, but that is all that we're going to cover today. Like I said, I want to do a live stream where we talk about all of this in detail. It'll be published after the fact if we do one, but let me know in the comments if you're interested in something like that, and we will do it. But I hope you all enjoyed this video. Please don't forget to like if you enjoyed this content, as well as subscribe so you can be notified whenever we come out with new videos. Share with any of your friends who might be interested in Pax Dei. And until the next video, I'm Altari, the Professional Gamer.